We continue our series of looking back at the 2022 Milwaukee Brewers by looking at our starting pitchers. This list will include players that made their primary appearances as starters, which that means that excludes relief pitchers who made a couple of starts throughout the year for bullpen days, and for players that are still with the team. The same grading system from our prior videos in this series applies to this. So let us begin. The reigning Cy Young Award winner for the National League had another strong season, but did have a slight step back compared to his absolutely amazing 2021 campaign. That is no knock at all at what Burnes was able to do this year, as it would have been almost impossible to replicate what he did in 2021. In the 2022 season, Burnes went 12-8 with a 2.94 ERA, 202 innings pitched, 243 strikeouts, a whip of .965 with a 4.1 wins above replacement score, and a 134 ERA plus, where the average for the Major League is 100. So amazing. He also made his second straight All-Star appearance, and he led the league in strikeouts, the first Brewers pitcher to ever do that. He had an absolutely amazing year again and should continue being an ace of the franchise for a few more years until he is going to be deservedly paid by a team out there. And for that reason, I give him a grade of A, because All-Star, probably going to place top 5 in the Cy Young vote, led the league in strikeouts. What more could he ask for from the ace of the Milwaukee Brewers? Next up is Eric Lauer, and he had an absolutely amazing start to the 2022 season, but then started to cool off a little bit, and by the end of this season, he kind of regressed back to what we expected from him, where he's a solid fourth guy in the rotation. He's going to give you quality innings. Not going to amaze you with it, but it's going to be a very, very solid guy you can depend on. But it did not help that at the end of the year, he kind of struggled with injuries as he landed on the IL after a few struggling starts. He went 11-7 with a 3.69 ERA, 158.2 innings pitched, 157 strikeouts, 1.223 whip with a 1.5 WAR and a 107 ERA plus. Again, he had a solid year as a fourth guy in the rotation, but due to injuries to other members of this pitching staff, he often had to be the second or third guy, which isn't really his role, and a thing that we don't necessarily want from him as well. But he was dependable, and I think you have a really solid year again. I give him a grade of B- for having a solid year as a guy who is just very dependable. It was kind of a rough start to the season for Braden Woodruff. He had a couple of bad starts, ERA over 5 to start the year, and ended up on the IL for about a month or so. But after he came back from the IL, Woody was a completely different pitcher and was probably the best that we have ever seen him pitch for this team. He set a franchise record by striking out 10 or more batters in 4 straight starts. And he was the best pitcher on the team down the stretch as we were battling for the final wild card spot with the Philadelphia Phillies. He ended up with a 13-4 record with a 3.04 ERA, mostly because due to his bad first month of the season. 153.1 innings pitched, 190 strikeouts, 1.070 whip with a 2.7 WAR and a 129 ERA plus. If Woody pitches the way he did at the end of last year, next season in 2023, he could be a Cy Young candidate. That's how good he was. And I'm going to give him a grade of A-. He's not fully an A as he had that poor start, but man, Woody's going to be good. I got a feeling he's going to have a Cy Young season next year. Man, poor Aaron had a really rough year. Some of it wasn't really his fault as he dealt with some very anemic offense most of his starts. But it's not what he wanted to see out of a pitcher who had so much potential in the minor leagues. Ashby went 2-10 with a 4.44 ERA, 107.1 innings pitched, 126 strikeouts, a 1.425 whip, which is definitely not good, with a negative .5 WAR and an ERA plus of 89. He very much struggled this season, and part of that was due to injuries. He did have a couple of stints on the IL that definitely did not help. But we're hoping that he can continue to develop, as the Brewers did sign him to a long-term deal similarly to what they did with Freddie Peralta. And we're hoping that he can turn into Freddie. And I give him a grade of C-, as some of it wasn't really his fault, but we want to see more out of him in the future. This is perhaps the biggest disappointment on our starting pitchers. Adrian took a big step back compared to his really good 2021 campaign. Again, part of the reason for this was he did spend time on the IL, which affected his performance. And that is a common theme among almost all of our pitchers this year. But that does not change the fact that he did take a massive step back statistically. He finished with a 6-10 record with a 4.73 ERA, 102.2 innings pitched, only 69 strikeouts, a 1.461 whip, and a .8 WAR and 83 ERA plus. Again, another very disappointing season from Adrian, a guy you really wanted to take a step forward and being the fifth man in the rotation and be another solid guy to back up our three-headed monster. But here's hoping that he gets healthy and gets back to form next season. I give him a grade of D+ due to his massive step back, but not being too harsh due to his injuries. This is a really tough one to grade, as Freddie spent a lot of time on the IL this season, as he was one of the few members of the Brewers to be on the 60-day IL, and he, in response, recorded the fewest innings pitched of his career, excluding the shortened 2020 campaign due to COVID. And in those few innings, he was all right. He wasn't anything flashy or unexpected, but he also wasn't awful. So you really have to wonder what he could have done if he was healthy the entire season. Freddie finished with a 4-4 record, a 3.58 ERA, 78 innings pitched, 86 strikeouts, 1.038 WHIP, with a 1.0 WAR and 110 ERA plus. Again, it is very hard to kind of grade Freddie this season due to him missing so much time. But I'm going to give him a C+, as when he was solid, nothing too flashy. But hopefully next season he'll be able to replicate what he has done in 2021. This feels really unfair to grade too harshly, as the only reason why Jason was a part of the Brewers rotation at all and not spending the entire year in AAA was due to massive amounts of injuries on the staff, with every single one but Corbin Burnes having to sit on the IL. And it kind of showed why he was a career guy in the minors. He finished with a 2-3 record with a 5.40 ERA, 71.2 innings pitched, 46 strikeouts, a 1.619 WHIP, and a negative .8 WAR with a 73 ERA plus. Again, it is very unfair to grade him too harshly, as he was probably only going to be a minor league pitcher for his career, and we didn't have any expectations for him coming into the season. But I am going to give him a grade of a D, because he did mightily struggle whenever he was making a start. And for the final tally of everyone's scores, and to get an overall final grade for the starting pitchers, Burnes gets a 4, Lauer 2.7, Woodruff 3.7, Ashley 1.7, Hauser only 0.7, Peralta 1.7, and Jason Alexander with 1. And that gets us a total average of a 2.3, or a final grade of C+. As you can see, we were carried very heavily by Corbin Burnes and Brandon Woodruff, but I do think a couple of guys would have had higher grades if they weren't injured so often. I'm looking at Freddie Peralta and Adrian Hauser potentially for bounce-back campaigns in 2023. Up next for this series, we're going to wrap up on the player side of things by going through all the relief pitchers that we had on the final roster at the end of the year. Then after that, looking at the front office and the decisions that they have made. If you enjoyed the content, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And I look forward to talking more Milwaukee Brewers with you in the future.